Okay, so I have told you, Sarah, quite unexpectedly that I'm setting the bar a little higher for you in this next question. And as I described before, what I'd like you to talk about is a way of describing yourself, your sense of both who you are as a teacher and what your main goals are as a teacher, in a way that would be applicable to both this first period intervention class as well as your fourth period regular English arts 8th grade class.
I think I would just say I'm trying to be attentive to every student's needs and push every student to fulfill their individual potential, because in first period they all seem to struggle in different ways, and in fourth period I find that it's the same idea. I have EL students, I have students who are so above the content they're not challenged at all. So I really just want to focus on being as attentive as I can to helping. I mean, I can't ideally help 35 students in as much as I would like to, but I really want to find ways that to accommodate activities to challenge all levels. I've realized going over grading some assignments for the PAC that it's not about if they completed their work, it's not about if they wrote the whole paper, it's if are they getting the idea. And I can see that even students who are very challenged have issues with that, and EL students have issues with different ways of understanding the content. So I want to focus on not just if they complete the work, I want every student to do what's best for them, do what they have to do to get to that next level. So I guess I just want to be responsible as a teacher in that way, to know the needs of my students and then do what I can to help them.
And PACT, just for people watching this video who don't live in California, PACT is a performance assessment for California teachers.
Yes.
And I have a question for you on that. When you were reading over your students' papers on characterization, was this part of task 4, the assessment task, or was it for another part of the PACT?
I chose not to analyze that piece of writing for the assessment because I felt the characterization worksheet they did was more reflective of the specific process I had been teaching them through the learning segment.
Got it.
So I'm looking at if they were able to identify character traits, if they were able to find textual evidence, and then if they were able to describe the significance. And I felt the essay or the paragraph portion covered that as well.
Right.
But for those students who are maybe not the strongest writers, I feel like that's maybe not the fairest way to assess if they understood it. Rather than working in a group, they were able to help each other. And there were, I think, more elements to look at for the worksheet rather than the paragraph.
Oh, interesting. So for the fourth period class, it turned out the writing of the paragraph, which a number of students were finishing in today's first period intervention class, because I guess they'd started that form of assessment.
Today they were actually doing the summative assessment assigned by the district. So,
okay.
But my paragraph assignment was very similar. They had to identify character traits and cite textual evidence.
Right. But that turned out to be not a very good form of assessment because of the way it undervalued the knowledge that students had who were uncertain about their writing skills.
Right. Some students still really struggle writing complete sentences, while others, I got some turned in that were like 3-4 paragraphs long. So again, I want to find that balance in ways to challenge those students. Maybe they could have cited more textual evidence, and then with the lower levels, maybe just I don't know, adding sentence frames or something to help them get started. So trying to find that balance. So yeah, it was a wide range of assessments, but I felt like it was more fair to grade them on those specific steps I had been teaching them.
Right, yeah, I see. And then back to your sense of your role as a teacher in getting better and better at that type of differentiated instruction. How do you feel, or what is your expectation of yourself as a teacher when students are facing district-wide assessments like the ones that the students were completing today, that, as you just said, will make distinctions between students that will create pretty wide gaps between, quote, proficient and below proficient students?
My expectations of myself, I just want to prepare them as much as possible. We knew what the assessment was about weeks in advance, so I actually didn't really plan for my pack to prepare them for that specifically, but it ended up being great preparation because it was all about character traits, and that was what my pack was about. So I'm sure there are some teachers who maybe take for granted that the students can do the assessments without much guided practice or reviewing of topics, but I feel like if we know what the assessment's about, it's only fair to try to prepare them as much as possible with activities and scaffolding and just practice until they have to take that assessment.
Well, I guess my question actually comes out of, I thought, a very perceptive observation on your part, but one that creates problems within school settings, and that's that as long as our assessments are writing-based and paragraph-based, if you apply this to your fourth grade class, those form of assessments are always going to create huge gaps, just like you might say if the assessment was how many elephants can waltz. You're going to find that not very many rise to the top.
Yeah, exactly.
on that chart. So it seems to me you're describing writing as a single form of assessment as having a similar effect on your students. That it's going to necessarily create pretty wide gaps between very proficient, and below proficient students.
Right.
So what is your role as a teacher, sort of knowing in advance that when these assessments are done by the district and the students get the test scores back, as I assume they will, what is your role as a teacher in anticipation of the fact that any one form of assessment is going to reveal pretty wide gaps?
I suppose feedback is really important, giving not as much feedback as possible, but valuable feedback that will help them. You could do that as a class or individually. So, for example, if they wrote a paragraph or an essay, we could review it together, talk about what most of the class struggled with, or even little things that one or two people struggled with.
Right.
And I think peer assessment, helping each other out in that way. So if we said, okay, this student had a problem with this, maybe someone else can answer how they did that differently to help them out.
Right.
So providing feedback to kind of, I guess, lessen the gap, and just trying to give them the tools that they need. I mean, I feel like writing is just something that takes practice and years to perfect, especially for English learners.
Yes. Right.
I have English learners who, one of my students, he will just copy a passage and thinks that is what he's supposed to do. And so, there's huge problems like that, and then there's the students who can write forever. So I just want to focus on bringing them up to speed.
Right.
Yeah.
That with the understanding that writing is a performance art, and that the only way to get better.
And it's only going to get more complex in high school and college, and so I feel like this is a really vital stage to prepare them.
Yeah. Is there any part of your role as a teacher that sees yourself as helping to make students aware of what you know and I know and any educator knows, and that's that any one form of assessment is going to give a skewed picture of student ability?
I think they realize that because we take different kinds of tests. We have multiple choice, short answer, paragraph tests. So I feel like they see there are different ways of being tested, and I'm sure they realize where their strengths and weaknesses lie.
Right.
And I think we try to show them that there's not just one way of assessing your knowledge. It's not always writing.
Yeah.
It's not always filling in the bubble. So we're trying to give them a range. It's important for them to be able to write because those are the district assessments, of course, but that's not always, the best way to assess what they know. That's why I analyzed that worksheet, because I felt like just
Yeah.
because they weren't writing a paragraph doesn't mean they aren't able to find evidence
Right.
and so
right,
forth. So,
right.
and we could talk about that more with them, my
Mhm.
mentor teacher and I, and
Right.
let them know that, you know, writing this one paragraph for the district doesn't determine your worth as a writer or reader
Right.
or student.
Right.
So we can make them more aware of that
Yeah.
by just providing different tests, different outputs of their knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.